Hi, Joe here, Profit First Reseller. As you can probably hear by my voice, I am quite stuffed up, actually in the midst of a crushing sinus infection. But what I found is movement is what's good for my sinuses. I gotta move that gunk around, get everything cleared out. So that's what I'm gonna do, even if every step can be uncomfortable when your sinuses are so inflamed. I found if I can tolerate it, it does help me get over it a lot quicker. Just gotta keep moving. So we're going on a walk today. What I thought I would talk to you about, I thought I'd bring the camera, turn it on, and talk to you about something that Toy Mike from the Tech and Sports Facebook group, also Toy Silly on YouTube. Mike is an eBay seller, and he asked me specifically in a video, which was so cool, such an honor. Thank you, Mike. He asked me essentially, what was the tipping point, what was the turning point from $500 a day to $1,000 a day in my business in eBay? So I thought that's what I would talk about today, is the breakthroughs, the reflections that it required, the changes in my life it required to go from selling around $500 a day, which I think is about where Mike is when he said in the video, to $1,000 a day. And essentially, it started with this. It started with me asking myself the question, how do I become the kind of person that's capable of selling $1,000 a day on eBay? How do I become the kind of person that's capable? Because there were already some roadblocks. Like, regardless of the strategy, at that point where I was, and let me say this, because I was at around $500 a day at a certain point. $500 a day is really freaking hard, okay? Anybody who's doing anywhere close to $500 a day in resale, top end number, that's a lot of work. You understand that if anybody's been there, especially if you've maintained that for a consistent amount of time, that's a lot of work. So kudos to you. Anyone really, anyone who's been able to achieve those kind of sales, $500 a day, that's full time, right? That's straight up, that's full time. It's still full time at $1,000 a day. I think it's just about getting super strategic, and sometimes strategic about putting more work hours in. It's also about strategic in other ways. So we'll talk about it. So anyway, I think Mike is, or yeah, again, around that $500 range. I think that's awesome, Mike. You can support a family on that. So much of life is about managing expenses, keeping your expenses super low. We've had the same cars forever, and our main daily driver is a Prius, which is great here in Dallas because everything is 30 miles away, and that really helps reduce our cost of living. We live in a very modest house, and like I've said before, I don't have a warehouse, I don't have employees, I don't have VAs. It's literally my wife and I, Heather, we're doing this thing together as we have, we're gonna be married 10 years this year, and we started our first business before we even got married. We've been a pretty dynamic duo for a long time. And yeah, anyway, the question I asked myself at $500 a day was, how do I become the kind of person that's capable of 1,000? Because I already felt like I was at my capacity at 500. I think you can probably relate. 500. And again, we were comfortable financially because we kept it lean. Heather is so good at helping us keep our expenses reined in as a family, and we live modestly, right? And I personally, I like nice things, but I also have zero attachment to them. I think that's something that was pretty drilled into me as a kid growing up, was people are more important than things. I think especially probably because my parents recognize that I do love gadgets so much. But at this point, I would consider myself an enthusiast to the point where I love owning nice things. But if I don't use it, I'll sell it in a blink. I don't have any collections. I collect zero things. I sell it. The only thing I collect, honestly, at this point is money. My wife and I are not financially secure yet, and I will not have energy forever. So that is prime directive right now. part of why I was asking myself, even though we were paying the bills, making around $500 a day on eBay. And that's not profit again, that's top end numbers. So just $500 in sales. How do I become the kind of person that can do $1,000 a day? And again, I don't want to increase my expenses that much or at all. Now there are some expenses that are going to balloon. Of course, as you do more orders, you're going to have to pay for more bubble wrap, more boxes, all that stuff. But I was just trying to avoid any more ongoing expenses. No other storage units, nothing like that, right? Something Gary Vee talked about. I used to listen to a lot of Gary Vee. I have not listened to Gary Vee in years, but he was pretty formative in a couple of things. And one thing I remember him talking about was just that time at night from 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. or 10 or 11 p.m. That's that time that's still yours. Even when you have a job that is not ideal for you, that time for me, it was after the kids go to bed sometimes. It was more like 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock. That's your time to execute on those additional dreams. Like now I absorb the message. Like I said, I don't really listen to Gary Vee, but there's a couple messages I have like fully integrated. And I agree. Looking back in my life, I'm gonna be glad that I spent time working on projects with impact during those hours. But what I've noticed is it takes a lot of extra mental energy and physical energy together to be able to tackle a hard task in that time at the end of the day when you've already been working all day. It requires a lot of endurance. So where you might think that I would be turning down my focus on exercise and physical training, I was actually, as much as I can, trying to turn it up. You know, in that time of going from 500 to 1,000 a day, I think I ran a couple of marathons and was training quite a bit. And especially cardio. There's something for me about cardio that is it has multiple benefits. Okay, for me, it acts a little bit as meditation, as I'm just able to focus on very simple things. Oh, there's some mud here. I'm traversing through the mud. You know, it's meditation for me. If I can exercise outside, I'm also getting my vitamin D. There's so many benefits. And the main benefit that would affect my eBay business from cardio workouts is the ability to endure, to stay on my feet, and to keep working until I literally drop in bed at the end of the day. And if I can stay on top of my cardio fitness, I have that energy. After dinner, I'm ready to go. I'm still ready to go. I'm like antsy, right? I'm like ready to get the kids' teeth brushed. Let's get the books read. I got work to do, and I'm excited to do it because I know I'm primed. But I also am just aware that there is a limited number of sunsets we got to work with, right? And I got energy now, and if I can continue to build my capacity, I'm gonna do it. Like, I'm in my late 30s and 38. Definitely don't necessarily wake up feeling spry right off the bat like I used to, but I'm learning so much more about my body and what I need to function and to perform because I keep pushing the limits. I think I'm getting better in a lot of ways. Now, father time is undefeated. Like I said, there are certain factors out of my control, but you can keep pushing. You see, people's cardio fitness can continue to increase way late in life. And muscle mass is always good for you. It is a very protective health factor in terms of mortality. Just keep that muscle mass on. Eat that protein, vegan protein, meat protein, whatever it takes. Support that muscle mass. I think that's so important. So again, whereas you might think, I want to go from $500 a day to $1,000 a day. What do I need to do? Well, I made sure I was working out consistently. And for me, that often involved signing up for a race so that I'd have something to train for. And trail races around here are so fun. They're not competitive. Everybody cheers for each other. It's my kind of race. I'm the least competitive person in the world. I'm very hard on myself, but I have zero killer instinct. I don't like seeing people lose, but I love seeing people try. That's why I cry when I watch the Olympics sometimes, because this is just somebody trying their best, right? And same with trail races. I've cried watching people finish, give it their all. There's something beautiful and emotional about that. And I like being a part of that. So, and trail races are cheap, especially around here. It's like $80 and you get a t-shirt and a fun experience. And so I've loved signing up for these trail half marathons or marathons. Or the last one, I signed up for a marathon, did a half marathon, decided I'm good. But sometimes that's how it goes. Can't win them all. But I actually felt like I won that day because we had babysitting for my parents, and half of the reason I wanted to quit is because my wife was there at the finish line, but we still had a couple hours of babysitting, and instead of just making her wait for me, I'm like, I can go for a long run another day. Let's go on a date. Let's get out of here. So I got my half marathon medal and I GTFO'd. So fitness, health. Are you capable of it? Can you work? Can you work at any available hour? I think that's something to ask yourself, especially if you have kids or just, life's unpredictable. And a business like eBay has the flexibility to allow you to work anytime, but do you have the engine to be able to produce quality work when the opportunity arises? When you're, in my case, maybe Heather decides to go to bed early and it's 9 o'clock and I'm sitting there thinking, I've got another couple good hours, what can I do? And I could just flick on a movie. But if I've got that energy still, for me, that comes from just being healthy overall, I guess. That's where I can continue to work, right? And that's just something that Gary Vee, let's see, I'm all twisted around here. I think this is the right way. Gary Vee was talking about working that 5 to 9 or working those evening hours as a way to work on your side hustle. I don't have a side hustle. All I do is eBay. So what I was doing is I was just taking all of these extra hours and just pouring it into eBay. So in a way, how do you go from $500 to $1,000? Well, you work more. That was definitely part of it. Part of it was just making sure that I was using all of my hours that I could to make progress towards a goal that I cared about. So that's one part of it. I think working more. Another part would be getting in shape so that I have the energy to work more when the opportunity arises in those evenings. Pretty much every night, I'll just throw on a podcast or one of the archived live calls from the Tech and Sports Facebook group and just get to work, lock in, train that squirrel brain, right? Like I got it. I got the squirrel brain. It's in there. I see it. I understand it. We chat. They're a voice. They have a voice and I appreciate them. As a parent, you need the squirrel brain to be on top of things because kids come in with crazy random problems all the time. And the squirrel brain, I think, can kind of help with things like that, kind of unpredictability of life. But the squirrel brain does need to be trained to be quiet sometimes. And sometimes I got to lock in. I'm going to work for 3 hours or 6 hours or 9 hours. And I've developed that ability. That was not me. Like I was a kid that has always had a hard time sitting still, but it's been practice. It's been years of practice, of course, but it's also just becoming convinced that the goal is worth it, that the prize at the end of the rainbow is worth the hardship. So I made a few notes here. I'm going to pull that up on my phone as I just stick to this side of the trails away from the mud here. It's almost dried out. It'll be another day or two before it's properly ready for mountain biking, but I'm just trying to maintain the trails here. So if my goal was to do $1,000 a day on eBay, what I had to do was start asking myself on every step along the process, is this something that I could do? And if I was able to do it all day, would it net me, or gross me at the top end number? Would this be able to produce $1,000 a day in eBay sales? And unfortunately, what that did was eliminated almost all of my sourcing options. because it is really hard. Okay, well, let's do the math, right? If I was going to go shopping every day, I would need to be able to bring in $1,000 worth of inventory at least to be able to support $1,000 worth of sales, right? Maybe a little less with it's $1,000 worth of sales includes shipping price, but you get what I'm saying. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars of inventory. And at that point, I was at closer to 500, and it just started to eliminate a lot of options, right? It was either I would have to be thrifting all day, every day, and the bad news is, number one, I don't like driving, and number two, I don't like shopping. I think that actually is beneficial in some ways as an eBay seller, because again, I don't like shopping, and I don't have any collections, and so I'm much less likely to accumulate stuff, I think, maybe than the average eBay seller. But still, it's hard to manage all the stuff. And okay, anyway, so what I'm trying to say is I'm looking around for sourcing. Thrift stores, for me, would require going out all day driving. Can't do that. Can't do thrift stores. Facebook Marketplace. I was doing a lot of Facebook Marketplace deals, buying lots. Sometimes I would buy a lot of video game stuff that would be worth a couple of hundred or a few hundred. But I realized I'd have to be doing probably 2, 3, 4, 5 of these Facebook Marketplace meetups on average every day to sustain a business like this. Like, you start to realize how quickly $1,000 a day is nuts. I don't know. I don't see very many people with numbers like that on eBay, especially doing it solo, right? And especially just doing it with inventory that still has good margins like we're doing. But it's really hard. It's really, really hard. So it was okay, so what else could I not do anymore? What were the Goodwill outlets? Same thing. I could be there all day and get about $500 worth of stuff. Is what was happening. Or I'd be there for a few hours, but I'd need to also use the rest of my day to list what I bought and then pack what I sold. So I'd typically be at the Goodwill outlet for 2 to 4 hours and then come home. But you also got to include the driving time. It was 25 minutes to drive there. I would go early to wait in line. So that's an extra 30 minutes to an hour. And it became hard to manage, and I would say not supportive of my goal of $1,000 a day. So what did it take? Sorry, this is rambling. I think my head is definitely affected by this sinus pressure, but we're doing my best over here. So sourcing really had to change. And this is where the sourcing change that happened, essentially every part of my business changed. And I'm gonna go through each part of my business and how it had to change. So it was piece by piece. I was literally just constantly looking for all the ways in which I could improve my business. So in the sourcing side, what I had to do was start developing relationships with vendors at the same time that I was continuing to do all of my existing sourcing, right? Like, it's not like I ever just stopped doing my eBay business so that I could look for new avenues. I'm always working. I'm always utilizing all the inventory that I have. But personally, at that time, I was also, in that extra time, I was looking for ways to improve and change and upgrade and to go to that next level if I could, to really try to retire maybe in the next 10 years with my wife if possible. That'd be pretty cool. So, sourcing. I've talked about it before. Essentially, the shorthand version is that I made a Google Doc spreadsheet or whatever, a Google Sheet, and then I went on Google Maps in another tab on my browser, and I just started searching for the words that I'm interested in and looking for companies and schools and electronics recyclers and, electronic shops, any kind of resale shop, any pawn shop, and just started getting a collection of phone numbers and email addresses and contact information, making calls, perfecting my pitch, talking to people, and just exploring all my avenues, right? Like I had to utilize all of it. Like, this isn't kind of at $500, I was quickly running out of people to follow. Like at that scale on eBay, I just don't see a lot of people talking about how to do that. I don't know if there are a lot of people doing it and are just quiet about it, but certainly where I've looked online, not a lot of people are talking about how to do a scale like this. So a lot of it was experimentation and just people, just figuring out who the people are that might have the stuff that I want. So that was a big upgrade for the sourcing. But again, one of the most frequent horror stories of new resellers that I hear is buying and overbuying, often a pallet, and then getting overwhelmed and losing money and it taking over your house. And so buying pallets is hard. And like, that is something that I feel like by the time I was able to buy pallets, I was ready for it. And in fact, it almost felt easier because I was working so hard to try to do $1,000 a day without the pallets, and all of a sudden, boom. So that was a big upgrade, big unlock for me. So that's sourcing. Next up is, let's say, listing. Listing is another part of my business that had to change, going from 500 to 1,000. I think this is when I really refined my personal rule of what I call essentially the 1 minute rule, where I give myself 1 minute to research an item, and then I got to pick a price. I got to make that listing. I got to take those photos in the next few seconds, and I got to move on. And that should be no longer than a 2 minute process, but no longer than 1 minute spent on research for any item, even if it costs $100. And that's just a rule that I've had to stick to. Otherwise, that $100 item is just going to sit on your shelf until you feel like you can dedicate 20 minutes to it. And I really believe that you can make good inventory into bad inventory by spending a ton of time on it. Because that time is not free. You could have been doing other things. You could have been listing other items. So listing, you got to get brutal. And that's where I really developed my ability to list 100 items in a day and have that be like a normal weekday. You know, the first few times, it's hard. Like listing is a mental endurance exercise. It's kind of like running, but for your mind in a way. You just have to make a lot of decisions. What's the price? What's the title? You know, where am I going to position it? What's the shipping, description? You know, all these things for each item. Doing that 100 times, it's hard. It's hard on your brain. So that just takes practice. Like I would really feel mentally quite drained those first few big listing days. And then it's just like any other muscle. I think it's something that you can develop over time. And I also got better at just getting efficient. Just like cardio, just like running, sometimes it's not always about getting in better shape. It's about learning to work less. You know, if you see a really amazing runner, they look effortless almost. And of course they are putting in effort, but they've also figured out that efficiency side where they are getting way more speed out of their body than the average person for the amount of watts that they put into their running stride. Pretty incredible. So my listing, I just had to get super disciplined. Never ever getting caught up in a death pile. When I'm touching an item, I either donate it or list it right then. No piles. Piles is terminology that I heard one time of when you don't know what to do with something and you're getting a little bit overwhelmed and you say, and then you just throw it onto a shelf or a surface for it to live until the next time that, you know, it either gets in the way or you think you need it and then you have to try to remember where it was. So listing, that's listing. I think that's how I improved my listing process. Finally, packing. So something that I want to say about packing. I hear so frequently professional resellers going to Home Depot to buy a single box, going to Walmart to buy a single box, getting in their car to go buy bubble wrap because they ran out of bubble wrap. Like, this is where I'm gonna tell you to buck up a little bit. This is where my one of my missions on this YouTube channel, which is raising the standard of eBay sellers in general so that we all win by making eBay a better platform. Like, guys, you can't be going to the store, wasting an hour of your day, getting sidetracked, walking around Walmart and Home Depot looking for a single box. Like, so for my personal rule, when I'm listing something, I either need to pack it right then, or I at least need to know exactly how I'm going to pack it, make sure I have that box ready before that thing gets listed. Nothing in my store gets listed until I already have the materials to pack it. With bubble wrap, I'm on a subscription with American Bubble Boy. Again, best bubble wrap I've ever used. I use their 100% recycled option, and I get it on an auto delivery. So I think I get 2,000 feet. It's like 2 big triple rolls, and I get that every 2 weeks. And I just have it on auto supply. I try to keep a few just in constant background, and then I just keep an eye on my store. So I always am honestly, like a few weeks ahead, maybe even a couple months ahead as far as bubble wrap. And then if I see myself getting a little bit low, I keep the subscription as it is, and then I just buy an additional few rolls. When I'm a little busier, if I'm packing more large items, sometimes I need more bubble wrap for a certain time. So I'll just up my temporary inventory. But I found that 2 of those big triple rolls every 2 weeks is about right for my business. And then sometimes I have to add a little bit of additional. And I found that's kind of what you want. It's better to be slightly under than slightly over. Otherwise, you just start to slowly accumulate more and more bubble wrap until your garage is completely full of bubble wrap. Ask me how I know, because I did it, of course. So, all right, so that's sourcing, listing. So for packing, you can't be going anywhere to get your packing supplies. Everything needs to be getting delivered to you way ahead of time. You need to have all the boxes, all the bubble wrap. Seems obvious. You need to have so much extra printer paper, so much extra tape. You need to be apocalypse ready. Because I guess this is something I don't talk about that often, but like, I'm deadly serious about eBay. Like, I really feel like it's not immediate, but in a way, this is how I'm fighting for my family's survival. Like, I can tap into that pretty easy, right? Like, this is what my family needs to do to afford healthcare in the current system that we're in. So I take this deadly serious. Can't be wasting time buying a single box for some $40 item. Like, let's do better than that. So that's sourcing, listing, packing. I think I'm getting crotchety. I think because I'm sick, I'm like a little bit angry in this video. I gotta chill out, man. Jeez. All right, bubble wrap, tape, running out of boxes. Okay, so I also did a good amount of streamlining my life in order to go from $500 to $1,000. I experimented with things like Factor 75 and Cook Unity, which are delivery meal services where you can just get all your meals pre-made. All you gotta do is pop them in the microwave for a couple of minutes and they're ready to go. Super easy. You can pick the ones that have the macros that you need. I happen to have dietary restrictions with the gluten-free, dairy-free, and almost all of the services can cater to all that stuff. And vegan as well. I end up eating a lot of vegan stuff because that's dairy-free and I love that stuff. So love a good vegan vegetable heavy dish. Oh wow, this is the main path, but it's pretty overgrown right now. And I don't want to have that brushing up against my bare leg, so I'm going to take the side path here. So Cook Unity, Factor 75. The cool thing, so there is like a dozen of these meal delivery services, and I think that they all have a ton of venture capital funding, and they're all rushing out there to try to gather as many users as they can by offering insane coupons. And so almost all of them offer 50% off your first, week or couple of weeks. And so we just did that with all of them essentially, which allowed us to sample them all, but also get a bunch of meals. And where they're normally in like the $15 to $16 range, I brought them down to like the $7 to $8 range per meal, which is great. And I didn't really realize before, but when I switched to the meal plans for a few weeks, the time savings felt like it was like twice as much as I was expecting. And I was like, yeah, I won't have to cook anymore. But what I didn't realize is you also don't have to do dishes, which saves so much time. All the prep dishes, of course, are your meal dishes. So it actually saved even more time than I was expecting with those meal service boxes. So I do still have those. As a backup, I got some in the freezer. But these days I focus on super quick and easy fresh made meals like the eggs that I made in a previous video. I love burgers in a cast iron pan. I love big batches of chili, like New Mexico chili with beef and red chilies, or curry. My wife makes an awesome like butternut squash curry. So that's incredible. And that you can just make a huge batch of it, put it in the freezer in portions, and I'll just eat the same thing for a week in a row sometimes. So I love doing that. I'll eat the same, essentially for, at least for lunch. And then sometimes my wife is making dinner for everybody, and then I'll have my eggs for breakfast. And so it just kind of fills in all the other meals, especially that lunchtime meal when I'm working, trying to get that momentum. So, excuse me. Whew. I work up a little sweat. And actually, you know what? Starting to feel a little bit of like clearing out of the nasal passages, which is good. Very good. Okay. So chili, love curry, like a butternut squash curry, kind of like a Japanese style, I guess. Almost with potatoes in there is my favorite. And I'm getting a call from my dad. I will be right back. All right, we're back here. This is my dad calling. We're making some Mother's Day plans for the weekend. Anyway, streamlining the life. Meals is such a big thing. You got to eat every day, especially if you want to perform. And so focusing on those easy meals that keep you fed and happy, that just take the minimum amount of time to make. I brought it up before, but there's a book that I liked a lot called Someday is Today. And in it, the author, who's a teacher, has decided that for, I think it was breakfast or lunch, I think it was lunch, since he found that if typically he would eat lunch alone anyway and get back to work, oatmeal was his choice because it took less than 5 minutes to prepare and less than 5 minutes to eat. Just something that I guess I don't think about very often is the efficiency in eating your food. Maybe that's going a little too far for me, but that's why Matthew Dix appreciated the oatmeal, is that not only is it easy to prepare and quick, but you can eat it quickly as well, and that allowed him to get right back to work, writing books or doing the things that he was actually passionate about. So for me, my only passion is eBay. Like for those couple of years when I was building this business, I would joke that I literally have no hobbies or side hustles. And eBay had become all of that wrapped up into one, and it really was the truth. So I guess to kind of wrap up here, any final things? I think having no warehouse or office space also is saving me time on commuting, allowing me to spend more time listing or processing. Scheduling pickups, of course, making sure that you're not wasting any time. Going to the post office, if possible. I delayed that for way too long. Wish that I would have done it way sooner. Scheduling pickups and taking that leap of faith a little bit of trusting your drivers, but I'm glad that I did. And I think that's it. I think those are the main things. Essentially, a lot of going from $500 to $1,000 was just getting out of my own way and removing any of the obstacles in my life, stopping me from just doing more of what I was doing. And then there were also some big breakthroughs and things like sourcing that allowed me to save time and spend more time processing, which did take a lot of time in the beginning, but I've been able to get better at processing and get really good at wrapping cables and processing Wii remotes, right? I think I'm faster than the average bear in that stuff. And it's hard to develop the skills of sourcing to get faster in the same way. You can only drive so fast to a thrift store. You can only walk up and down the aisles of a thrift store so quickly. So at least personally, and I'd love to hear any of y'all how you've upgraded your thrifting routes, but I found it hard to game plan how would I get my thrifting route efficient to the point where I could hit this goal. It was hard. Maybe like a lot of YouTubers are talking about, maybe, you know, going only to thrift stores is not the best strategy for full-time eBay. So I appreciate y'all joining me here on this rambling collection of thoughts from my sinus infection-addled brain. Thank you for all the support, all the love. Sorry if I came across like mean or something. I felt like a little bit too like, I don't know, Jocko Willink in this one. Like, get to work harder, like that hustle culture. That's not what I'm trying to put forth at all. I'm really only trying to explain, looking back, what I think that it was that allowed me to get there. But internally, what I was experiencing at the time was just constant self-doubt and constant questioning of myself if I'm doing the right thing, and constant experimentation until we eventually got here. So thank you. Let me know what you think. Let me know if this made any sense. This is Joe, Profit First Reseller, and I'll see you in the comment section.